Welcome to the Human Rights Cafe. My name is Jacob Sule. When people's rights are tampered with or denied, it means that my rights and yours are being undermined. Hence, we must educate people about their rights. The Human Rights Cafe is a collaborative virtual conversation of a Right to Live initiative to equip new generation of leaders to know, promote, and protect citizens' rights and dignity of all persons. The conversation seeks to promote human rights, justice, peace, and strong institutions as provided for by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Our goal is to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign and respect for citizens' rights. If you'd like to know more about the Human Rights Cafe, please join our conversation on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter via @HRightsCafe. Once again, Jacob Sule. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to this month's edition of the Human Rights Cafe. It is a pleasure to have you all join this conversation from around the world. And I have with me today Mr. Adetunji Adeniro. Tunji is the founder of INEC and join this conversation from Lagos, Nigeria. I also have with me on the conversation today Faith Olofintuyi. Faith Olofintuyi is a Nigerian trained legal practitioner, policy expert, resident in the United States of America from Chicago. Faith, thank you for joining us, and Tunji, welcome to the conversation today.
Thank you very much, Jacob.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Faith.
Very nice to meet you, sir.
Thank you, guys. This conversation today would cut across the issues happening around the polity and politics in Nigeria. And I'm quite glad that we all have young persons here today who will be having this conversation. So my first question will go to Tunji. Tunji, we heard that a few weeks ago, precisely a few days ago, on the 20th of June, the Independent National Electoral Commission announced the resumption of the continuous voters registration. For we as Nigerians, tell us, what is the implication of this registration exercise for Nigerians?
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody, from wherever you're joining us. Good evening, Nigerians. So the issue, the updates on the continuous voters registration, it's a very good thing, and it's a welcome development for not just us as young people in Nigeria, but for the Nigerian democracy as a whole. And as we know it, for the past 1 year or 1.5 years, there has been a lot of discussions around young people, which led to NSAS, led to a lot of protests about people bringing in, agitating for good governance and all of that. So this voters registration is an opportunity for people, especially young people, to channel their energy, to channel their anger to how they want the government to run. So for people that have not voted before, for people that have never registered before to vote, and those who have registered before but never voted, this is an opportunity to learn more about what it means for them as a citizen and what is their civic duty as a citizen to participate in Nigeria's democracy. And as we know, Nigeria is a democratic republic, and it will continue to be so. So no matter how much we agitate, no matter how much we fight, we protest, we do all of that, everything still comes down to what democracy is all about, which is the participation of political parties in how leaders emerge. And if you are going to participate in a democracy, the only way to do that is through electionary process. And the framework in Nigeria, how the electionary process works, is through the Independent National Electoral Commission. And Independent Electoral National Commission has also said that for you to participate in electionary process, you need to be registered. So these are processes that have been put together. This is a framework that has been put together by Nigeria and Nigerians, and we must respect that. All right. So if we're going to respect that, the next thing for us is, when it's time like this to register, we need to come out and register to vote. I can give you some statistics. In the last registration in 2019, the number of voters were 84 million people. All right. And during the election, do you know how many people actually came out to vote? 29 million people, which is roughly about 31%. Very low, right? So, and there are a couple of reasons that were responsible for this. People always think that their votes do not count. I don't know if we have enough time, but I know that we're going to go deeper into some of these discussions later on. But people always think that even if they register, their votes do not count or something. But first of all, this is the first step, right? So we should always look inwards into what are the things that we can control as a people. This is what we can control. We can control the fact that we will register with INEC, right? When we register with INEC, we can also control the fact that on the day of election, we'll come out and vote. So we should always think within our circle of influence, think around the things we can control. Don't worry yet about whether your votes will count or not. Have you really done what is required of you as a person? So this year, INEC is targeting about 20 million additional voters, which will bring our total voters to about 104 million people. All right. So if we do that within a population of about 200 million people, this is a great feat, right? So for us to be able to achieve that, we need to support INEC and support all the agencies working together to ensure that we get these 20 million additional voters into the national register.
Thank you very much, Tunji, for that detailed analysis of why and the implication of the voter registration for every Nigerians and the need for us to actually go out to register for the process. So, Faith, let me come to you. Faith, you are a policy expert, and most importantly, you are a Nigerian trained legal practitioner currently residing in the United States of America. Tell us about the position of the Nigerian law as regards the right to vote and the right to be voted for the forthcoming generation, and also touching base on the registration process. So tell us about the legal implication of the right of Nigerians to vote.
Yes, I mean, Jacob, great question, man, and thank you for this platform. Just it's such a privilege to be able to talk about franchisement and disenfranchisement within the Nigerian scope. So I learned in law school and in uni that every Nigerian has the fundamental right to vote and to be voted for. And so it's very sacred. I believe that every Nigerian youth should go get their PVC. It's much more complicated than just an authority approach to instructing people to just go get their PVC. It also must come with the empathy, the understanding that the process historically has not worked for young people. And so there is a really high level of skepticism as to, is this even worthy of me staying on the queue for an hour? And so I think it's important to walk and chew gum at the same time by both talking about how the right to vote has come to be. It's been paid for with blood and sweat and tears, especially for women. And so having that right to be able to vote right now, it's an indication of the struggle for liberation that has been happening for thousands of years. And so I think it's a privilege that now we can register online to vote. But I also think that we can't separate the conversation of what is the consequence of voting and the consequence of not voting, which is also a form of voting. I think it's very important that we say that even when you don't vote, you actually voted. And so the implications of that vote is going to come back to you. So as far as your question goes, Jacob, I think it's important that the right to vote has been with us for a while, but the right to have your vote count is a different story.
All right. Thank you very much for that very good one. I understand that, yes, you have rightly said that the right to vote is one that's quite secret. So let me come back to Mr. Adetunji. There is this perception that the average Nigerian believes that our vote is not really, and this is because we have seen so many stories and a perception that the whole electioneering process has been monitorized, that these votes are being casted for president. Tell us, how do you think he has been and begin to challenge that narrative and have a change of view towards the forthcoming election? And for we as young people, how can we begin to dream and seek for a future and contribute to that as a people? Yes, very quickly.
Thank you very much for that awesome question. I will start with where Faith ended. Faith made a very valid point, and the point in the sense that people have been disenfranchised, and there's a lot of distrust in the system. So one of the reasons people do not bother to vote is because they do not trust the system. They do not trust in the fact that when they vote, their votes will count. And because a lot of times, the elections have become an avenue for people to make money, right? So, but I'm of the opinion, and I stand by my opinion, the fact that I like to play within my circle of influence, right? So one of the things that we have influence on as young people or as a people is to first of all vote. Okay. Now the issue of our votes don't count or something. This is a narrative that the political class has given us so that we can believe it, and it will scare us from actually voting. Trust me, Jacob, if our vote doesn't count, politicians will not spend 5,000 naira, 10,000 naira on the day of election to bribe people to vote. So the fact that they bring 1,000 naira, 5,000 naira and bribe people to vote is an indication that your vote actually counts. Now here's the way where here's where they actually rig the election. When people that are supposed to vote do not come to vote, let me give an example. We have, let's say, in a polling unit, there are about 1,000 people that are registered to vote. Eventually, 300 people show up. Out of the 300 people, about 80% of them were bribed, and then we have 300 votes. There's 700 void votes. People that did not come to vote on that day. That alone has left a reason for politicians to rig the election. So it means that the 700 votes is left, at the mercy of whoever pays the highest to whoever is going to be collecting the money or whatever. So the fact that people do not come out to vote, first of all, has given politicians reason to rig the election. That's one. Second thing is that a lot of people believe that if they come out on that day, there's always the use of thugs, there's always violence, and the fact that I have to queue, on that day to wait before I get to vote and all of that. So I believe that the process is going to evolve, and I think that these are things that INEC is also working with. But right now, the process we have at the moment, thank God, we have, which is kudos to INEC. We have an online registration right now. It means that there's a lot of work going on. Now, coming back to the question whether our votes count or do not count, our votes actually count. The reason why most of the votes or most of us think that our votes do not count is because politicians rig. And the reasons that we rig or they rig is the fact that people who do not vote are leaving the void votes to politicians to manipulate. So it's important that we come out and claim your mandate. Come and exercise your rights, and you reduce the chance of rigging.
Thank you very much. Faith, let me also ask you, do you have anything, like, what is your perception? Do you entirely agree with Antunji on the fact that we as young people, beyond coming out to vote, we must also show concern and secure our vote? What is your perception about that from what you start the conversation?
I think that we are the army. I think that the youth, they're the soldiers, they're the army. And what Mr. Adetunji just said right now about security concerns at ballot boxes is very real. We're right now behind screens talking about how safe it is to go out and vote in Nigeria. When we all know, I went to University of Benin, I worked in Asaba, I've lived in Lake. The security issues is serious. We really can't just brush it aside. But I do agree with what Mr. Adetunji said, that we are the soldiers. That's what I heard, which means that young people have to turn up en masse, just have to be there as a force, so that because we do have a critical mass of people who want there to change and so show up at the polling booths, we would intimidate the thugs, even the ones the politicians have given guns that they don't take back after elections, and the ones that they paid money to make sure that polling booths are disrupted. So rigging elections, like Mr. Adetunji just said, is not new to Nigeria. It's not, we didn't invent it. This is very global. Elections are manipulated, electioneered in other parts of the world. It's more of the methods, when you go to a polling booth and you're not sure that you'll be safe. Even parents end up going on defensive and telling their kids, just don't go out to vote. That's the message we've been hearing all our lives. It would take more than a conversation to just soften the heart of young people that they have to take charge of the election process in this way by turning up at every polling booth and making a presence. The presence so strong that no security force can break it.
Right. Thank you very much. This will take me to my next question. I think both of you have set on the pace for that conversation. Mr. Adetunji, you are a civil education expert, and I'm aware that you run a civic education organization that does more of grassroots campaigns and civic sensitization for the Nigerian youth and the Nigerian population at large. Tell us about more your work, what you're doing to sensitize people about the forthcoming election, particularly how you're trying to get people at the grassroots level to keen into this registration process and then go out to ensure that they register and get their people. So tell us about your work at INEC and why you're doing that work and the strategy in which you're using to ensure that young people go out to register and cast a ballot. Yes, Mr. Adetunji.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this project. Okay, so we started INEC in 2017, and our vision is very simple. We want to be the preferred platform to nurture and develop leaders for public sector in Nigeria, and this involves getting involved in our democratic process and also getting involved in the electionary process. Okay, so and every year we have our plans planned out, and then we also have our aims and objectives. So one of the critical things that we plan to do at the beginning of this year is to get as many young people as possible getting involved in voting and also getting involved in our democratic process and then coming to political activities at large, because we understand that democracy involves getting involved in political process. We cannot shy away from it. So we can form activism, we can do the civic engagement platform, but when we do not have the right leaders in the system and we are being ruled by uneducated and misinformed people, we get to have issues around governance and other processes. Okay, so these are one of the issues that we want to solve. And this year, one of the things that we want to do is to get more people involved and to get more people to vote in the forthcoming election. So we are starting with the local government elections in Lagos, and then we'll get that whatever structure, whatever system we build now, we'll go into what we want to do in 2023. And this time we're having a partnership with Johns Hopkins University in the United States, and we are going into grassroots mobilization and sensitization program, because we understand that when people, after people have collected their PVC, some of them just want to have it as ID cards, or some just want to do it in case the government asks for it or something. But no, we're changing that narrative to say the PVC is actually your power, and it's a power that you can use to change government, you can use to change systems. So you actually have the power as the citizen. The office of the citizen is the highest office in a democratic system. Okay, so we want people to realize that power and use that power at polling units and during elections. So we're going to be going about it. We have volunteers across the 36 states in Nigeria, but we're starting with Lagos, and we've selected areas within Lagos that we want to start from. And you may want to ask, why Lagos? So one of the first things that we consider is security, which is coming down to the importance of having the right people in the system, right? So you can't just come out and say you want to do things without considering how secure your people are and all of that. So the moment we are very clear on security and we're also clear on the support that is coming, we're going to expand into other states. The second reason is that when we looked at the statistics of the last election in Nigeria, Lagos State has one of the highest number of people that have registered when it comes to the what you can call the total addressable market when I think about from a business perspective. So about 95% of eligible voters in Lagos are actually registered with INEC, compared to a place like Osun State, where only about 67% of eligible voters are registered. Okay, so what the implication of this is that in Lagos, people are actually aware that they need to register with INEC, which is unlike other states like Zamfara or Osun State, where people struggle to even be aware that they need to register with INEC. All right, now the problem with Lagos is that even professionals, people like you and I that have registered with INEC, right, we do not come out to vote because first of all we are scared, right? Second is that we just believe, I mean, there's voter apathy. We just believe that, man, this thing will not work. Even if I register, it's just for me to have the voters card. I'm not going to disturb myself to vote because it's not going to count. Okay, so only about 25% of eligible voters in Lagos actually voted, compared to other locations where in the locals they actually understand their responsibilities, they understand what they need to do. But in metropolitan areas and some of the grassroots areas surrounding it, we realize that people just collect the PVC, but they do not just want to vote for so many reasons. So we want to change this narrative and come out and tell people that, see, if you do not vote, you are part of the problem. Like Faith said, if you do not vote, you are part of the reasons why bad leaders are elected, because you've given rooms for people to rig the election. Okay, so we're starting that, and then as much as we have partnership and we have support, we'll be going all out to other part of the country. All our volunteers are ready, and we are planning to go all the way.
Thank you very much. Now, Faith, let me come back to you. You've lived in the US for quite a number of years. You've seen how elections are being conducted. What would you say to the Nigerian government, for example, let's say the Nigerian government is listening to you, how would you, or what would you advise the Nigerian government to do as regards securing the election process and ensuring that our votes count and every young person understand the value of the election process and try to be a part of it? Very quickly, what's your thought about that?
Yes, thank you so much, Jacob. I mean, yes, I have. I just want to quickly add one or two things to what Mr. Tunji said, and then I'll come right back to your question. I'll make it very brief. So once again, I think it's much more complicated. I agree that if you don't vote, you did vote, because that's a wasted mandate, which means someone took that mandate from you. But I'm going to tell you a quick story about why my friend didn't vote in the last federal elections. And that's one of the things that will tie back to Jacob's question about how do I think the voting process can be improved in Nigeria. So there's a phenom in Nigeria that when you register to vote, I think you have to choose a polling booth, and that's where you must vote. Now, you can't vote anywhere else. And if you are not able to make it to that particular location on election date for whatever reason, you couldn't vote. So I know that there are similarities of that to the electoral process in the US here, but then the US compensates for that by having things like mail-in voting, where you can actually send your ballot paper in, and also multiple days of voting and not just one day. Phenoms like early voting and late voting, and those are things that actually encourage people to come out more to vote. So that would be my question, but that would be my answer to your question, Jacob. But it will also be a question that, yes, I have stayed out here for a while. Mostly because I've read about the election process. I've never voted, but I've seen to learn how does it work, and I see that there is mail voting. There are much more comfortable ways for people to actually exercise their votes. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, you really can't do that as much. So it's a question for Mr. Adetunji. How has INEC improved the voting process in the metropolitan Nigeria that would encourage people to keep voting another chance?
All right, thank you. Thank you, Tunji and Faith, for sharing your thoughts and ideas.
Am I supposed to respond to what he asked? He asked me a very, very valid question.
if you can do that in 30 seconds, I'll allow you to do that. So, Mr. Tuji, just go ahead and respond to Faith in 30 seconds, please. Yes.
Okay, so I'm not a spokesperson for INEC, but what I can say is that INEC did some exercises like some few weeks ago, changing some polling unit and then adding more polling units. Then the fact that there's now online registration for voters who want to register, I believe that is a step in the right direction. And I think what we need to now agitate for is for National Assembly to pass the electoral bill. I think once the electoral bill is passed, there's going to be provision for online voting, and then INEC can begin to start process on that. So I think the work really stays with us as people. INEC,
All right.
I think INEC is ready to do what is needed.
All right. Thank you very much, Tunji, for that. And now, we're closing this show now. So, Faith, let me come to you. What is your final word for the Nigerian government and the Nigerian youth towards the forthcoming general election and the process of registering for their PVC? In 30 seconds, your final words for the Nigerian government and the Nigerian youth on the need for them to register for the PVC and participate in the next general election. Yes, Faith.
So just two very quick points. Number one, register to get your PVC. It's the only weapon you have. Just get your PVC, and then maybe by the time we're doing episode 15, we can tell you about how to maximize it by voting for the right people and all other things. The second thing that I'm going to say to answer your question, Jacob, is one word: diaspora. It is a shame that the diaspora, which is the second or the third largest economy in Nigeria, still doesn't have access to voting, still doesn't have access to registering to vote. I just find it very ridiculous that Nigerians abroad are taken seriously as far as their money is concerned, but not regarded when it's time for voting. So diaspora voting, diaspora voting, diaspora voting.
Thank you very sincerely for that. Yes, we cannot overemphasize the need to begin to incorporate the vote of the diaspora into the electoral process. So, Tunji, your final words on the show very quickly.
Okay, so my final words will go to the Nigerian people and especially young people. I don't have any words for the government. So my word is, please, like what Faith said, you need to participate, right? You need to get involved and you need to register. It's very important because government controls every aspect of our lives. Government gives you certificate for everything that you do, either when you were born, when you get married, or when you want to travel out, or whatever you're going to do. Even when you die, you are not dead until government says you are dead. That's why they give you a certificate, right? So if it's so important, if government is so important, why do we want to leave it in the hands of uneducated and people who do not understand what it is to live a 21st century economy? So for me, I think it's important that people get involved, get your PVC, and if it's possible, if you are so interested, join a political party and participate actively.
Thank you very much, Faith, for your comments. You said the diaspora vote should be highly considered. And Tunji has said, get your vote and be involved in the process of electioneering process. We've come to the end of this conversation today. I'd like to thank my guests for taking time to join us into this conversation. Once again, I've been speaking to Mr. Adetunji Adeniran. Tunji is the founder of INEC Nigeria, a civil education platform who's out there trying to educate Nigerian youth on the need to participate in the electoral process and to see how we can bring a new life and challenge the narratives of doing things in Nigeria. I'm also joined on the show with Faith Olokuntuyi. Faith Olokuntuyi is a trained legal practitioner in Nigeria, but based in the United States, working as a project coordinator for PEP Chicago. I'd like to thank you very sincerely for joining this conversation.
You're welcome.
And I look forward to having you in a subsequent event. Thank you very much and have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Welcome